March 2025 in Buenos Aires, Argentina 4, Brazil 1. The Seleção, the most decorated national team on the planet Earth, didn't just lose a football match, they collapsed. They were humiliated on the road where Maradona once danced and Messi now rules. Barcelona looks like a team that had forgotten who it was. The nation that gave the world Pelé, Ronaldo, Ronaldinho, Zico, Garrincha, beaten 4-1. But this story isn't about that night. This story is about what happened next. To understand why Carlo Ancelotti's arrival means so much, you first need to understand the scale of the crisis. Brazil had been drifting slowly. Then all at once, after the humiliation of 2014, Sete, the 7-1 destruction by Germany, on home soil, might I add, that scarred this generation. This Brazilian football never quite felt its soul again. 2 quarterfinal exits, a qualifying campaign so turbulent it became almost comical. They threatened with FIFA suspension due to governmental influence in their own footballing federation. Their FA president was removed by a court order. 2 interim coaches came and went. Then Dorival Jr. was given the job, not because he was the first choice, but because their actual first choice had publicly snubbed them twice. Yes, the man Brazil really wanted, the man the nation had been holding its breath for, had looked at them in the eye and said, not yet. His name, Don Carlo Ancelotti. And for over a year, he stayed at Real Madrid while Brazil burned. And then finally, in May 2025, he walked through the door. The first ever foreign manager to lead Seleção in a World Cup ever. The most decorated manager in the history of the Champions League. Don Carlo had arrived. Here's the thing about Carlo Ancelotti though, that people always get wrong. They look at his face, the famous half eyebrow raised, the calm on the touchline. They mistake stillness for simplicity. They see serenity and assume that he is passive. But Carlo Ancelotti is one of the most sophisticated footballing minds alive. He has won 5 Champions League as a manager. 5! No one else has ever done that. He is the only manager in the history to win the league titles in all 5 European top leagues. England, Spain, Italy, France, Germany. He played in 2 European finals as a player at AC Milan under Arrigo Sarri. He served as an assistant manager to the same Sarri at the 94 World Cup. So this moment, managing at a major international tournament is something that he has been preparing for, consciously or not, for over 30 years. His signature as a manager isn't a rigid system, it's trust. He trusts elite players to express themselves. He builds a system around talent rather than forcing the talent into system. At Real Madrid, this was his genius. Benzema, Modric, Cruz, given freedom, guided by structure, liberated by his management to be the best versions of themselves. And now he had Vinícius Jr, Rafinha, Bruno Guimaraes. The same philosophy, just a new canvas. When he arrived at Brazil, he didn't promise revolution. He simply said, Brazil is fortunate to have many good players. Humble, understated, but underneath the calm is a plan. This is the central question, the physiological heart of everything. Because Brazil's football is an idea as much as it's a style. It is jogo bonito. You get me? I hope I pronounced that right, because writing this script was a little different. The beautiful game. It is samba rhythm converted into passes and dribbles. It is freedom, improvisation, and joy. But for years, Brazil has been playing football that looked European, mechanical, cautious, defensive block. In fact, pragmatism over flair. The fans hated it. The result was still bad, and the worst of both worlds was what they got as Brazil fans. So what did Ancelotti do? He didn't try to import a foreign philosophy. He did something more intelligent. He identified players who are Brazil's identity, and then he built a structure flexible enough to set them free. The system 4-2-4, or you can say a 4-3-3 in a fluid hybrid. On paper, it starts at a 4-2-3-1 or a 4-3-3, but in practice, in the moments that matter, it morphs into something far more aggressive, a 4-2-4, almost. And here is how it actually works tactically. The spine of the team, Alisson Becker in goal, world class, commanding, Marquinhos and Gabriel Magalhães as the centre-back, pairing, discipline, pace, Champions League pedigree, Casemiro and Bruno Guimaraes as the double pivot, one a destroyer, one the creator. This spine gives Ancelotti a defensive foundation to be brave in attack. Then we go into the freedom zone. Everything ahead of the double pivot is fluid. Ancelotti trusts his attackers to find their own positions, to swap and to improvise, and of course, to play. At the center of it all, the player whom the entire system orbits around is, of course, Vinícius Jr. What Ancelotti did with Vinícius Jr. is fascinating. At Real Madrid, Vinícius was a left winger who drifted inside. For Brazil, Vinícius Jr., with Ancelotti's guidance, repositioned him as a free forward, almost as a false nine centrally, with the license to drop, roam, pull defenders everywhere he wants to go. As the great Brazilian legend, Tostão, I hope I pronounce his name right because I don't want to butcher his name, wrote in his column, in these endless discussions about who will play centre forward at the World Cup, with a name cropping up every week, Vinícius Jr. is never mentioned. He has been the regular starter in that position, playing centrally and further forward than he does at Real Madrid. The dribbler who terrorized La Liga, playing 9 for Brazil. On the right, Rafinha. The Barcelona captain, the engine, the man who gives everything, defensive work rate married to creative vision. In the middle, Matheus Cunha, reinvented. Once a traditional centre forward, now a central attacking midfielder, or you could say forward. A player who carries, who presses, who links, who drifts. A connective tissue, basically. On the left is Vinícius Jr. And he is just free. The result is a system that looks like a 4-3-3. Then Brazil doesn't have the ball. When Brazil doesn't have the ball and becomes ferocious, when Brazil doesn't have the ball and becomes a ferocious 4-2-4, when they do, wide channels are exploited by the overlapping fullbacks. The double pivot gives the license to attack by covering them behind. For attacking players with the freedom to interchange, to create chaos that almost is impossible to plan against. This is not Jogo Bonito nostalgia. This is something new. Jogo Bonito evolved. Structure that enables freedom instead of suffocating it. But nothing in football is clean. And the road to 2026 World Cup was anything but that. Before a ball was kicked in North America, Ancelotti had already lost 3 players who have been in his starting 11 for the longest time. Rodrigo, his former pupil at Real Madrid. Ton Esteval, the teenager who the world was desperate to see, also injured. Eder Militao, the first choice right back, or maybe centre back, whichever way you want to put it, gone too. His preparation against Panama, a 6-2 win that looked comfortable on the scoreboard, revealed something uncomfortable underneath. The first team that Ancelotti fielded in the first half, his preferred system of 4 attackers, looked disjointed. The 2-man midfield, one of whom is a 34-year-old Casemiro, looked exposed. The Italian kept his expression neutral, raised his eyebrow, and adapted. And then there was the Neymar question. The most decorated Brazilian football of his generation, the man who carries the weight of a nation's expectations and the scars of 1,000 injury setbacks. After his torn ACL and 2 years of barely playing at Al Hilal, Neymar had returned to Santos, the club where his story began. And Ancelotti, who kept his intentions perfectly secret until the last possible moment, put him on the plane. Not as a starter, not as a savior, as an option, as a player who might, in the right moment, in the right game unlocks something special. That decision, merciful, strategic, deeply human, says everything about how Ancelotti manages. He thinks through the prism of the player, each person once was, and what they might still become. He doesn't discard, he reintegrates. Then the group stage, Brazil versus Morocco, June 13th in New Jersey. Morocco go ahead through Saibari, the new Bayern player. A clinical counter-attack, the kind of goal that exposes exactly the defensive vulnerabilities that Brazil's press has been warning about. The wide channels, the spacing behind, Brazil's struggle. They are not at their best. The crowd is tense, and then Vinícius Jr. receiving the ball in the penalty area, cutting inside, right-footed effort, bang, into the corner of the net. 1-1. The world exhales. Next game, Haiti, 3-0. Vinícius Jr. with a brace, Cunha with another. Brazil finally clicking into gear. And then came Scotland, June 24th, and Brazil was still devastated. 3-0, Vinícius with a double, the system working. The freedom producing goals. Group C won. The Seleção had topped their group. Don Carlo had delivered in the group stage. And by the way, I think against Haiti, it was actually Cunha with a brace and Vinícius with one goal, if I'm not mistaken. But here's what separates this moment from the previous Brazil era. CBF, the Brazil Football Confederation, announced Ancelotti's contract extension through the 2030 World Cup before the 2026 tournament had even concluded. They were making a statement. This is not a quick fix. This is a project. Ancelotti himself said it perfectly. I have arrived in Brazil a year ago, and from the very first minute, I understood what football means to the country. For a year now, we have been working to bring the Brazilian national team back to the top of the world. But the CBF and I want more. More wins, more time, work. More who has already won everything there is to win in club football. He didn't need to come to Brazil. He could have retired on the mountain of the Champions League trophies. Instead, I took the one job left that challenged him. Leading the national team for the first time, carrying the weight of 250 million people's dreams. And he did so with the same calmness he brings to everything. When a journalist asked him about the pressure of Brazil's 24th year wait without a World Cup, the longest drought in their history, Ancelotti did the thing he always does. He raises the eyebrow. He says, success. He has said is winning anything and everything else. He knows exactly what this is. He has never been under any illusions. Brazil's World Cup 2026 ceiling is as high as any team in this tournament. Vinícius, when he is on his game, is unstoppable. Rafinha, in form, is a Guimaraes, is one of the 3 best midfielders in the world in his position. The spine of this team, Alisson, Marquinhos, Gabriel, Casemiro, Bruno, is battle-hardened and elite. The question is not whether Brazil have the talent. They always have the talent. The question is whether this system, this manager, and the moment can finally convert talent into transcendence. That is the focus. That is the focus. Brazil have 5 stars on their shirt. 1958 Sweden, 1959 Chile, 1960 Mexico, 1961 USA, 1962 South Korea and Japan. 24 years, 6 tournaments, no 6th star. But something feels different now. Not because Brazils are perfect. They are not. The fullback position still causes a lot of headaches. The midfield is aging. The squad depth is ravaged by injuries. These are real problems. But football isn't about perfect squads. It's about moments. It's about a manager reading a game and knowing when to send Neymar on. It's about Vinícius receiving a ball in the penalty area in New Jersey and deciding in a blink of an eye that this is his moment. Carlo Ancelotti has spent 40 years in football collecting those moments, collating them, understanding them. He was a player at San Siro when Milan were the greatest team on earth. He was an assistant in the dugout in California when Brazil lifted the '94 trophy. He was the manager in Istanbul, in Paris, in Kiev, and every corner of the footballing map. Now he is here, in the green and gold, in the summer of 2026, in the cities across North America, chasing something that he has never won, a World Cup. And Brazil, 5-time champions, self-declared greatest national team in the planet, are chasing something that they haven't won since the man on the touchline watched as an assistant manager from afar. The story isn't finished, but the identity has been found. Don Carlo, the Seleção, and the sixth star. The rebirth of the Brazilian team begins now.